It's been a wild first 2 days of free agency from last year, actually going to division. That continued with Andy Dalton going to the Carolina Panthers. We'll talk about that, Michael Thomas's return, and why I think we got to stop listeners here on the Straight Up Saints
You're
podcast.
listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. And with the NCAA tournament finally here, you can get in on all the action and see all the underdogs, the upsets, and pretty much all the wild games that could unfold with DraftKings Sportsbook. The biggest tournament in college basketball is here, and new customers can bet $5 on college hoops and get up to $200 in bonus bets instantly. All you need to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with promo code BOOT, all capital letters. New customers, again, $5, and you get $200 in bonus bets instantly, win or lose. So make sure you get in on that DraftKings Sportsbook with promo code BOOT. Now, said it at the start. Saints keep losing guys to division rivals. It's a weird trend that keeps happening over the past 24 hours. And once you thought it was over with Caden Ellis going to the Falcons, David Onyemata going to the Falcons, and Shai Tuttle going to the Panthers, we get one more. And it's probably actually the biggest one so far. It's Andy Dalton signing with the Carolina Panthers. According to Adam Schefter, it's a 2-year deal with a max value of $17 million. Now, I'd imagine that's incentives playing into it. So it seems like he'll get at least $10 million of that 17. And it's interesting. Look, I'm not going to sit here and badmouth Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton came in last year as the backup quarterback for the Saints. Jameis Winston got hurt. Saints decided to roll with Andy Dalton. They felt more comfortable with him. And for all the frustration there would be at times, there was always that sense of, okay, he's still just like Andy Dalton at a later stage in his career where he's supposed to be the backup. He's not really supposed to be playing a starting role the way he did with the Saints. So I tried not to get super frustrated about that. And I think a lot of fans did the same thing as well. So when I see this deal, my initial thought is, look, for the Panthers, they need a bridge quarterback because they have the number 1 pick now after the massive trade they made with the Bears. And I don't think there's a lot of better bridge quarterbacks right now in today's market than Andy Dalton. Saints raved about what he could do in the QB room when it comes to helping others, knowing plays, talking about him having a photographic memory. That is something that could come into play for the Panthers, right? With a young quarterback, whether they take CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or even Anthony Richardson, whoever they take at number 1, you have that luxury now of letting Andy Dalton start for a couple weeks and waiting until number 1 pick is ready, or just sitting on the bench for 17 games and offering advice to that number 1 pick. So there is a pro there. And there also is, in hindsight, a pro for the Saints. And that is the comp pick formula. The Saints have lost a lot of guys now to big contracts so far. David Onyemata got a big contract, 3-year, $35. Caden Ellis got a big contract, 3-year, $21. Marcus Davenport got 1 year, $13 million in this economy, which is kind of nuts. And then today's deal, Andy Dalton with the Panthers. And Shai Tuttle, 3-year, $19 with the Panthers as well. So 5 players who have left, if my math serves me correctly, and if it doesn't, then I apologize, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate there. The Saints can get up to 4 comp picks. Right now, they got 5 players who have left on deals. Andy Dalton's deal actually is pretty good because it will factor into the comp pick formula. But because the Saints have already lost 5 free agents, the Saints can sign someone to a relatively decent contract that would be of impact to them next season. And it wouldn't change the fact that they still be eligible for 4 comp picks because of the way the first wave of free agency has really played out. So, look, it stinks to lose Andy Dalton to a rival in the sense that intel can be shared. He's a veteran quarterback, but the Saints kept Jameis Winston for a fraction of the cost of Andy Dalton, which is actually pretty intriguing. And I've said it yesterday. The only knock on keeping Jameis Winston is you have to deal with people being ridiculously unreasonable on Twitter, and they kind of show their true colors, whether or not they're fans of a player or fans of the team. And that will be an issue, and I've chosen to ignore it for the last 12 months, and I'll ignore it for another 12 months if I have to. But that was the only knock because Jameis Winston is more talented, more upside than Andy Dalton, and now he's cheaper. So that actually ends up being kind of the third plus in all this equation. But I wish Andy Dalton well, just not well if he plays against the Saints. But that's the first order of news. The second order of news happened prior to the Andy Dalton signing, and it's something that I think is going to play a huge factor if this guy can stay healthy, is Michael Thomas returning to the Saints. 1-year deal, $10 million, can go up to $15 million with incentives. I said it before and I'll say it again. I love this move for the Saints. And I know people are going to look at me with like 5 heads and be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Michael Thomas is never healthy. I get that. I get the frustration. But at the same time, the Saints needed a possession receiver. The Saints needed a guy who will jive quickly with Derek Carr. And that's who Michael Thomas is. Played in 3 games. He got hurt in those 3 games, but he still had 16 catches for 171 yards and 3 touchdowns in that span. The guy's still an elite player when he's on the field. And I know that is the trouble, the hurdle of getting over of, man, he's never on the field. But you look at the wide receiver market, it was Jacoby Myers, now signed to the Raiders. Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't think he's a great culture fit for what the Saints want, nor would it make sense for him to really leave the Chiefs right now. Odell Beckham Jr., love Odell. I think Odell is a fantastic personality. He would give the Saints a lot of juice, but I don't think the Saints need that flashiness that Odell brings because I like what Chris Olave has. I like what Rashid Shaheed has. I think they needed physical. I think they need a guy who dominates the intermediate routes, someone who can be a possession receiver, can play in the slot. Michael Thomas is going to do all those things if he's healthy. Now, I still think the Saints need to go do more at the pass catching position, whether that's another tight end, another receiver. Get more weapons, right? You're going all in on Derek Carr. He's your quarterback. Get more weapons. But just off the surface of this one, I do think that Michael Thomas and Derek Carr are really going to hit it off. You heard about Derek Carr saying when he got off the phone with him, he felt like they could take on the world. And maybe that is an exaggeration. But those are 2 elite competitors. One is elite ball player. The other one's a very good quarterback. But elite competitors. And I think there will be something to it. And I think they will really hit it off. And it's just a matter of health. But the fact that now it's not the health and, oh my God, the burden of that contract. No, that contract's getting ripped up. It's a new deal. It's a 1-year deal. It really is, in theory, a prove-it deal for Michael Thomas. So I don't want to hear anyone talking about motivation or lack thereof. There will be none of that. Michael Thomas will be more motivated probably than any other NFL player because, A, he's Michael freaking Thomas, and that's how he operates. And B, there's the incentive of, man, if he balls out, he'll get a new contract from someone. Will it be the Saints? Maybe not, but he'll get it from someone. And I think there is leverage to that. So Michael Thomas returning, obviously a huge fan of that. Now, I do think, though, the Saints should be kind of sniffing around for another wide receiver. And there's 2 names that I kind of look at. One of them is someone who, look, if the Saints want to go really just all in, you call the Raiders and you see what they want for Hunter Renfrow. Now, I do think that's the more expensive option. I'll pull up Hunter Renfrow's contract. It's pretty interesting, to say the least. He got I believe it was a $31 million deal. Forgot over how many years, but the Saints would have to be willing to make a commitment. So it was 2 years, $32 million. And Hunter Renfrow right now has got a $13 million cap hit with a 6.5 base salary. I just think when the Raiders signed Jacoby Myers and the Raiders get rid of Darren Waller and send him to the Giants and the Raiders cut Derek Carr and all of a sudden bring in Jimmy G, who knows McDaniel's system, but I think he's a lesser quarterback, there is a systematic and cultural shift in Vegas. And I do think if they want to get rid of Hunter Renfrow and the Saints are like, hey, let's go all in on weapons, he checks off another box, gives them kind of that emergency situation, right? Let's say, hypothetically, Michael Thomas went down and no one wants that. You're still like, okay, I have Olave. I got Shaheed. I have Hunter Renfrow. I got Juwan Johnson. Alvin's going to play at some point. I can't see him missing the whole season. You'll still have weapons, Now, I think this is expensive. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but there have been rumblings around the league about whether or not Hunter Renfrow can get moved. And if I'm the Saints, I just make a call just to see what's up. There is that familiarity between Hunter and Derek from their time in the Raiders, and they worked out pretty well pre-McDaniels, which I think is pretty interesting, right? Because everyone loves to rip on Derek Carr and talk about how bad Derek Carr played in 2022. Hunter Renfrow, the year before McDaniels got there, over 100 catches for over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. So I'm suddenly supposed to believe that Derek Carr and Hunter Renfrow just forgot how to play football, or is it they just weren't good fits with McDaniels, and McDaniels, though, didn't want to work with them either? I think that's probably what it was. Don't have to overthink everything sometimes. So that's one name. The other name, and this is the cheaper route, the same concept of getting a shiftier type of slot guy in there, is maybe taking a flyer on a Braxton Berrios who got cut by the Jets, and I don't expect him to cost a lot. Now, if I'm a Saints fan, I am not exactly slamming the table going, man, we better get Braxton Berrios. No, this is just a light suggestion. Saints should just explore the market. It's not very deep. I've said it a million times, But Braxton Berrios has had moments where he looks like he could be a solid number 4 on a depth chart. And again, this is all we're talking about. Saints have their 3 in my eyes. So you're just looking for a number 4. And like I said with Berrios, 2021 season, over 400 yards, over 40 plus catches. Thought he looked fine at moments. Now, he had some pretty bad moments this past season, specifically against the Vikings. You guys can go look back at his tape. He had a costly drop. It pretty much cost him the game. But, only 27 years old. He fits the mold. Can play some special teams too. So that would actually be another plus there for the Saints. And we know they love themselves some special teams. So that's someone that I'll mention as a flyer, like maybe a name you throw around. Hunter Renfrow would be the flashy one. Braxton Berrios would be the one where I go, all right, I'll look around. But I think right now for the Saints, focus is at running back and at defensive line because defensive line got ravaged through the first 24 hours. Like I said, losing Davenport, losing Caden Ellis, losing David Onyemata, losing Shai Tuttle. This was not a particularly great unit last year, but they did lose their depth, and that's what hurts. And that brings me to my next point. I've had a lot of conversations with people on Twitter, all friendly, about, how do you feel about the defensive line, man? They lost a lot of guys. And I'm torn between it because it's like, on one hand, I don't want to sugarcoat losing depth because I don't want to be this overly optimistic guy that when things that are not ideal for the Saints happen, I say, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. That's not who I am. I like to kind of call it how I see it. Now, sometimes I'm wrong, but I'm torn, like I said, because you do lose Onyemata and you do lose Shai Tuttle and you do lose Davenport and you lose Caden Ellis. Now, the ones that hurt the most, I think, are clearly Onyemata and Caden Ellis. Onyemata's been a good player for a lot of years. I think he's on the decline personally. That's just my opinion, but he's still a good player. And Ellis, on the flip side, I think he's on the rise. I think he's an ascending player who, and I spoke to him before he made his decision, talked about wanting pass rushing reps, and we'll see what role he's going to start for the Falcons. I'd imagine Coach Nielsen's going to use him in that pass rushing role. This is a guy that he just utilized this past season. So I think he's on the rise, losing Caden Hurts. Shai Tuttle, I just think as much as I loved watching him stiff arm Matt Ryan into the shadow realm, he did not do much besides that. There really wasn't all that much from Shai Tuttle. I thought he got overpaid because the defensive lineman market right now, you're getting overpaid. And then for Marcus Davenport, I wasn't harsh yesterday. I'll be harsh today. I have a really big problem with a lot of people going on Twitter and saying, oh, now Marcus Davenport stinks because he's leaving the Saints. No, he stinks because Saints fans were tired of not knowing which player was going to show up. That's it. I thought he was great in 2021. Not good. I thought he was great when he was on the field. And last year, he wasn't good. He just was not good. There was a joke flying around on Twitter, and if this relates to your tweet, congrats, because it made me laugh really hard while I was working. It was like, here's the highlights of Marcus Davenport in 2022. It was just the same half sack on replay nonstop against the Vikings in the London game, which was on October 2nd. I would know it was my birthday. And then since then, you didn't get a single flashy play from the rest of the season. And ironically enough, his final game as a Saint, he was ejected. So it's just frustration with Davenport. And maybe it works in Minnesota, but I find it funny that I'm supposed to believe that on a one-year prove-it deal, now he's going to find that motivation when he didn't find it in the contract year. It's the same thing. It really is. If anything, the contract year was even worse because if he followed up last year's season with another 9.5 sack season or somewhere in that realm, Saints are probably paying him or someone else is paying him long-term. He might have a good year with the Vikings and someone might say, I don't know, man. It's on 1 year, off 1 year, on 1 year, off 1 year. Show me it again. So I find it funny how we switch narratives. But that brings me to my final point. And I shouldn't really give him the attention that he wants right now because he's begging for it nonstop. But it is hilarious to me the way guys like Nick Wright will absolutely just crap on the Saints and their cap situation. But when similar teams run the same things, we ignore it. Or when similar teams lose players in free agency, that's okay. I've seen so many people not bat an eye when the Bills lose Tremaine Edmonds or the Eagles lose Hargrave or when the Bucks get rid of all their guys this year and decide that they're going to just, in essence, tank. No one says anything. But the Saints are kind of kicking the can down the road and freeing up cap space to be as competitive as they can right now in a terrible division. And it's like, oh boy, what are you doing? That's the wrong idea there, which makes me think two things. A, I don't know why we're promoting tanking so much in the NFL. There's nothing worse to a fan base than telling them we have no plan on winning games this year. It's the dumbest thing. So this whole plan for the Saints may blow up in their face, and to some degree, it is reckless, right? It is reckless to constantly go for it and put all your chips at the center of the table because you want to think about having one hand on the wheel and being able to look around as well. Saints kind of are just flooring the car and going for it. But on the other hand, I respect it because I'm tired of these teams that sell their fans on get the one pick, get the number one pick, get your quarterback, figure it out. Do you know how many times that doesn't work out? Like, yes, the Bengals got Joe Burrow and the Jaguars got Trevor Lawrence, and that's worked out fine and dandy. The Jets are in a position now where they're on their knees for Aaron Rodgers because guess what? You whiffed on Sam Darnold and you whiffed on Zach Wilson. What happened there? Not great. And you look around in other spots, I see the Panthers have the 1 pick. Texans have the 2 pick. Colts now have the 4 pick. It's not that easy. And the Colts would be the story of, hey, when you go for these vet quarterbacks and you go all in, it could blow up. And I get that. And the Colts would be the cautionary tale against that. But I hate this idea that we're just dunking on the Saints because they're going a different way than the rest. There is no concrete, perfect way of building a team. There's no concrete, perfect way of managing your cap. And yeah, kicking the can down the road, in theory, it's like, oh, you're going to trip over those cans at some point. The cap keeps going up and you're not paying interest. If anything, there's less dollars that you're going to end up paying for because the cap is going up. And this ideology that the Saints all of a sudden have now lost groundbreaking players because of the cap, it's just false. It's categorically false. And for 2 reasons. A, the first thing I will say is the Saints don't lose players because of cap space. The Saints lose players because they put a price on them. And if they don't think that they're worth the certain price that they get over that, they say, all right, it's fine. Go somewhere else. It is what it is. Because the Saints lost Marcus Williams last year, and I didn't hear a damn thing from Nick Wright. But funny enough, if he did want to say, well, the Saints lost Marcus Williams because of money, that's fascinating to me because Marcus Williams played safety, right? And Marcus Williams got a lot of money. Well, guess what the Saints did after that? They spent money on Marcus May, who's a safety, and Tyrann Mathieu, who's also safety. You might have heard of him. He goes by the Honey Badger. So the money stopped them from getting Marcus Williams, but it didn't stop them from getting 2 safeties in Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu. That's interesting. That's very fascinating to me. So that's 1. 2, the players that people are freaking out over, you're dying on the hill that the Saints screwed up and they're losing Marcus Davenport. You didn't talk about him last year because he didn't do anything last year. So don't talk about him now. Or David Onyemata or Shai Tuttle or Caden Ellis, who, again, nice contributors for the Saints. But I didn't hear a single person from the national media give Caden Ellis credit, give David Onyemata credit, give Shai Tuttle credit. But now it's like they lost the backbone of their defense. And the funny thing is, had the Saints signed those guys, right, kept them, you know the narrative would have been flipped to, here we go with the Saints spending irresponsibly, keeping guys that aren't worth it. So which one is it? Do you want to just dunk on the Saints? That's what it is. Or do you honestly feel like these guys are players that they couldn't afford to lose? Let's be real. It's the first one. Because the Saints, if they sign those players to the contracts they got, I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't love it. And maybe this is the unconventional take here. I think the Saints might have kind of, in some degree, been saved from themselves because they needed to revamp their defensive line. This defensive line was not the strong suit of last year's team. The linebacker play was the strong suit. They got really good production out of a rookie in Alontae Taylor. When Lattimore in, he was elite. Tyrann Mathieu really stepped up in the final stage of the second half of the season. And the guys who really made impacts towards the end of the year, Caden Ellis, yes, they did lose him. But Carl Granderson, they didn't lose Carl Granderson. Cam Jordan, still kicking. The Saints will find a way, and they will have the assets to really go after it in the draft because of the comp picks now that they gained. Because now that they have the comp picks for next year, they know that they can move some of next year's draft picks that they currently own, knowing they'll be replaced by comp picks next year. They can do that. They've done it before. They might do it again. And that might give them incentive to say, hey, pick 29 and pick 40. You may want a running back. You may want a tight end. We're going defensive line. And I'm going to say it from now. If the Saints go defensive line at 29 and 40, I will commend them because I need to see them revamp that unit. I need to see them add young, fresh blood to that defensive line. Because if they're going to get to where they want to go, they got to make sure they play complementary football, and they're going to need a better defensive line to do that. So I do like that. But to kind of put this thing in a whole perspective here, I'm so tired of people who aren't paying attention to the Saints from September to January all of a sudden come out of nowhere with a take because it fits your narrative. It's lame, it's lazy, and it's just false because I'm supposed to believe the Saints, because of their cap management, couldn't sign Shy Tuttle to a contract he probably isn't necessarily worth right now, and he could get there, and I hope he does, because of cap issues. But they kept Michael Thomas. They kept Jameis Winston. They signed Derek freaking Carr to a 4-year, $150 million deal. Where were the cap issues with those deals? So those we kind of turn a blind eye to, right? Saints get Derek Carr, upgrade at quarterback. We ignore that one. Saints lose a player who you didn't hear of until yesterday, and you make a big stink. It's crazy to me. It's wild. But I would expect nothing less from people who didn't watch the Saints from September to January. And that's just the way it goes. But I really do find it interesting. And we will laugh about this if the Saints do revamp their D-line in the third wave of free agency and in the draft, which I expect. And that kind of leads me to my final thing, which is I'm going to go get myself ready and watch some defensive lineman prospects for this year, because I would heavily anticipate the Saints going D-line early. And if there's a guy that they like, I would not be surprised if they move up to get him. Because like I said, you lost 5 free agents. You can sign one without affecting the comp pick formula because you can only get up to 4. Saints can be aggressive if they want to in the draft. They really can. And I kind of think they should, because like I said, you're going for it now. Your offense looks pretty good. And the Saints offense is a nice blend of young talent with veteran players. How about the defense? You got a nice blend of young and veterans in the secondary, right? Lattimore's still young. Adebo's young. Alontae Taylor's young. Tyrann Mathieu's older. Maybe get into safety. Defensive line, you are older, but maybe Peyton Turner takes a jump. Linebacker, perfect blend of Pete Werner, young and veteran, in DeMario. So we'll see what happens. But I would imagine they go defensive line in that. And since I mentioned Pete Werner, a little bit of a tangent to end it here. Saints didn't sign guys like Kane Ellis, who, by the way, you guys know I really do like Kane Ellis, and I really wish him all the best. He's a great dude. They got to save their money for Pete Werner. Kane Ellis got a top 20 linebacker contract. You guys would have complained had he got that money. And by you guys, I mean national media. I mean some fans too. Like some fans would have complained about that. It's just the way it goes. Now it stinks he went to the Falcons. But Pete Werner's got to get the bag at some point as long as he stays healthy. And as much as I like Kane Ellis, Pete Werner is a potential all-pro player if he could stay healthy. So there is that to think about. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. It's been a hectic 24 hours. Saints have lost a lot of free agents. They're gaining comp picks in the process. And they're proving that a lot of people just like to ignore facts and push certain agendas that make no sense. But is what it is. We'll try our best here to keep it facts only and keep it positive vibes for the Saints. Because, again, like I said, right now, still early, but they've done more good than they've done bad. Because I said this a month ago, my major need for the Saints, defensive line. Now, running back, I got to address, but I feel confident about them getting running back done. Defensive line would be next. And hopefully, maybe in the next couple of days, I'll have some news there that we can share about defensive line. But we'll see if that happens. But if it does, you guys know what to do. You subscribe to the YouTube page for Boot Krewe Media. Make sure you guys get notified when videos like this drop, and stay tuned for more content here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for